Good morning, good morning. It is 7:21 a.m. Friday, October 14th. I'm here for my daily analysis for the New York session market open. I'm going to start with going over the economic calendar for today, going over the equity sentiment, go over DXY and dollar analysis, and then finally I'm going to switch on to gold and GBP USD for my trade ideas for this coming New York session. Now, in terms of data, we had nothing going on overnight, but we are waiting for some important data coming out in the New York session at 8:30. We have a collection of data, but mostly it's the core retail sales and retail sales that are going to be very important to see. We're forecasting a slight decrease from previous in the retail sales and actually a slight improvement in the core retail sales, but still negative. So they're forecasting a negative growth month over month for September, anticipating the consumer to be feeling the heat of inflation, to be feeling the heat of the recession, and starting to spend less. So looking for some trends in consumer spending habits in order to see it's a leading indicator of potential corporate profits and potential recession is the spending habits of the consumer. So it's very important. So we'll be seeing at 8:30 any effect it has on the U.S. dollar. Now, going over the equity sentiment. So yesterday's CPI print is still really important here to note that regardless of the high inflation data, we still had equity markets do a fake out and grab some liquidity down here around the 3,500s for the S&P 500 and close sharply higher, breaking back above these previous highs here. Now, I did a full video explanation on this and how the fundamentals are still bearish. However, I'm prepared and adapting into a potential pullback phase in the market, as so far the optimism, quote unquote optimism, is holding weight and we are still holding above these previous highs. So in terms of looking at the VIX, which is now pushing towards the lows here, and in terms of the S&P 500 still staying above the previous highs here, you're going to be considering this as optimistic for the short term. Now, having said that, within this pullback here, we're now creating this sort of lower high here. We could end up continuing into the next zone where we may end up getting rejections from this zone, breaking back below the previous highs and continuing the bearish trend here. Now, for me to validate that the major trend is back, the bears are back on the equities, the bulls are back on the dollar, I would need to see equities back below this zone here, this weekly key level 36.40. All right, so if we stay above, I'm still playing the short-term optimism. Now, on the US dollar on the daily time frame, I'm zooming out here, and on the daily time frame, even with yesterday's rejection wick and a strong candle body close on the bear side, we are still maintaining above these previous candle body highs here and the previous highs, previous wick highs, as we are forming some sort of support at this time. But every single day this week, there was not one single day, as I zoom into the 4-hour, there was not one single day that I came here for my New York session trade ideas and we weren't stuck within this price range, within 113 area and 113.5. Even if we've had a couple instances where we've dipped to the downside, buyers bought that back up and we're back in the range. Even CPI comes out hot, we come out high, We reject these highs, come back into the range. Have more momentum come to the downside, reject this liquidity zone here, and we're back within the range. So really extremely messy price action for this week, as it's very indecisive with the US dollar near the highs, equities near the lows, and just a lot of choppy sideways price action for this week. So having said that, we are still within the same range, so the same trade ideas are valid. However, at this point, I'm cautious that if we come back up here, there's a lot of liquidity here. We got the previous highs here. May end up getting a deeper pullback, as we have already identified the short-term optimism in the stock markets, and we've identified potential profit taking and pullback and exhaustion and all these things, that we may end up getting a deeper pullback to gather more liquidity before the bulls come back into play and continue the trend, right? So I've already anticipated that we could get a potential pullback here. So for me to validate that the US dollar bulls are actually back in play here, I would need to break back above and close above the 113.5 highs. That would validate that finally we're getting some 4-hour closures. We're actually getting a lot of price action and a lot of trading going on above this range, and that we could continue to the upside, fill these highs, and potentially create some new highs. If not, well, I'm going to continue to expect sideways price action with the occasional break to the upside and break to the downside, unless we do get that break above this zone. Or situation number 2, if we don't break and we get what I actually anticipate as more likely to get a deeper pullback, potentially double bottom here, or even if we come down lower to retest this zone, what I think is more likely to validate US dollar bulls back in play is to see a reversal of the short-term pullback trend. New higher highs being formed. Right now, we're just printed a new intraday low below these lows here. Even if we buy or spot it back up, we're still somewhat playing this pullback structure in this indecision. So again, we need candles to print new higher highs and then higher lows to validate that we're continuing that bullish trend here. So again, if we come down to double bottom, new higher high, that could validate it as well. We come back, we fade this short-term strength here and continue the pullback. Then over here, new higher high, could get that continuation. Right. So far, based on the equities, based on DXY, I am anticipating further pullbacks, further US dollar weakness, further optimism as we're indecisive, as at these historical prices, we dollar bulls are grabbing profits and equity sellers are grabbing profits as well, creating this pullback. Okay. Now looking across global equities, it's pretty similar here. The US 30 is leading the way, actually at 0.5% up. All 3 equities in the US are up. Interesting enough, NASDAQ is lagging as well. It's only up about 0.2% here. So this is usually on a healthy bullish day, NASDAQ's usually leading. So I consider this a weakness, a sign of weakness, that the NASDAQ is actually lagging the rest of the indices, right? So I'm noting this. UK 100 is up, DAX is up big, and the rest of the markets are up as well. So again, this validates my short-term optimism sentiment for the time being. US dollar is actually the strongest currency so far, as we see the US dollar cross against the yen, the pound, the euro, and a collection of other currencies here. Just basically broad strength across the board. The yen is is pretty weak. The only thing weaker is the pound and the euro here, and the pound is just very ugly so far across the board. Is probably the weakest currency here. So, having said that, let's go on to gold and start looking at some potential trade ideas for this session. Now, based on the higher time frames, we're still respecting this bearish structure, this higher time frame bearish structure, where we've printed this new significant lows around 1680, 1681. Had the pullback to the 1800s, grab some more liquidity, retest previous lows. Then from there we've had strong bearish price action, consecutive lower lows and lower highs, and a new lower low printed around 1618. Now from these lows, sellers grabbed profits at historical lows. We've seen a pullback, broke back above these previous highs here, but we came back to retest a significant level around 1728, previous sell side liquidity zone, where sellers came in to push price down to these new lows here. So it's a significant level of bearish structure here. We came to retest that, and we quickly faded the move and came right back below previous lows here. So we're respecting the bearish structure. As long as we stay below 1681, gold is still bearish and will end up making its way down to retest the lows here around 1618. So the higher time frames are still bearish on gold. On the 4-hour time frame, we see that there is quite a mess brewing here. There's very messy price action from the exhaustion double top at our sell side liquidity zone. We've had the sell-off pretty smooth. We've had it run pretty smooth. It came to retest our zone liquidity, had a nice rejection. Came to retest again before the CPI, and CPI data just dumped. But we had a rejection of these lows, and gold closed back within the range, back above these highs here. And that was due to the basic investor sentiment growing a little bit more optimistic near the end of the session yesterday. Now, after a little bit of ranging, we're back below this 4-hour break of structure, this key zone here. So as long as gold stays below this 4-hour, we have confirmation to the 4-hour is within bearish structure. We're maintaining this bearish structure, printed a new low, and now looks like we're printing a lower high here, and we're back below these previous lows. Now, zooming into the 1-hour, at this point, I can't help but see that we have a nice trading opportunity here, as we had this new lower low. So we had the 4-hour is bearish, the higher time frames are bearish. Now the 1-hour came to retest its previous level of liquidity, had tried to create a higher low, but failed to break as buyers exhausted created a 1-hour double top and a new lower low. Now if you look at all time frames are bearish, the 1-hour just printed a new lower low, break of structure. The 4-hour just printed these new lower lows, breaking structure. The higher time frames are bearish. The fundamentals are bearish. So this is all pointing towards a potential sell for this session, as we are pulling back as well to this key level. So now I'm going to identify this as a 1-hour break of structure. And now this is now a potential sell zone for me, as we are retesting this right now, this price level around 1660, 1661 region. This is a combination of the 1-hour break of structure, so it's a 1-hour break and retest. It's also retesting the bottom side of the 4-hour break of structure, and also this this basically 4-hour order block and liquidity zone, right? So very possible, if we have signs of rejection on the 1-minute time frame, that we're going to end up fading out and rejecting 1660s to retest the lows here. 1644s would be my target for the day, and I'm not anticipating, given the structure of the U.S. dollar, given the short-term optimism sentiment in the equity markets, I'm not expecting this to break and have a melt, especially since it's Friday. But I am anticipating a potential rejection here. But again, this can end up closing back above the range and then continuing the week ranging here. So it's very important to validate rejections on the lower time frames prior to getting into the sell trade. So that's basically that's my trade idea 1. Trade idea 2 would be the double top or triple top in this instance at this 1 hour supply zone. Right? So now my 2 trade ideas, potential sell from here or 1 hour double top, sell from here. I don't like this trade idea as much because in that case would be back above this 4 hour breaker structure. But it would still be valid, and I would validate continuations based on the 1 minute time frames at this level right here. So once you get into this trade, if it starts rejecting and then slowing down here, I'm going to trade manage before it comes back to my entry here. So I'm going to have to validate this trade breaking and continuing in order to hold the trade longer. Now zooming into the 1 minute time frame, we're starting to get initial reactions from the zone 1660, which is good. So here, if I'm bringing down the 1 minute price action, we're creating this sort of pullback structure where buyers are slowly making their way to the upside. So it's not impulsive at all. It's very corrective here, and we could easily get rejections and continuations based on this price action here. So this is the last buyer push. So at this point, pullback, we could potentially create a double top here. This could be a potential entry zone. Or if we have this double top and then confirmations here of a new lower low, break a structure, breaking below these lows, breaking below potential neckline here, creating an ABC rejection zone, getting the retest, stop loss above the zone here, to get the continuations that way, and that would be a safer route, doing the ABC, and then a more aggressive sell would be the double top here. Potentially have a smaller stop loss, better risk reward here, but more aggressive as it could stop you out. But this provides a pretty good risk reward opportunity for a sell, or wait for the confirmations here and have a potentially smaller risk reward, but more confirmations as you see the reversal of this pullback trend. So looking for gold sells today. And last but not least, looking at GU. GU is a little bit mixed here, as we had some positive GBP data for, we had positive and optimistic headlines, Bank of England supporting the economy, some political headlines, a whole bunch of different moves, tax rate, cutting taxes, now reversing that, but so it's a big mess. And so far, we've got the daily time frame respecting this bearish structure. And it looks like we're rejecting from these highs here, which is confirming the the overall bearish structure here. But I can't ignore that the 4 hour just printed this new higher high here. So this bullish pullback structure is still valid here, as we had bears come in and then from this low rejected previous structure here and printed this new high, and now we're retesting this level right here. So the 4 hour is bullish here, so I'm going to be very cautious. I'm not going to be looking for buys either, just because if I look at the 1 hour, we're selling off pretty strongly, so I don't want to be buying counter the higher time frame trend, counter even The 1 hour is bearish below this level here. We're creating some bearish intraday structure. I already looked at the currency strength, and the pound is the weakest currency so far. So I would much rather focus my energy on these gold sells, that everything seems to be lining up a little bit better, rather than go for a pound counter trend and hope that this level holds. Whereas we could just break back below this zone here and end up fading out much of this move. So I'm going to be staying away from GU. If this buy zone holds, then perfect. Going to be looking for better sells, potential double top, or retest of this daily break of structure for sells. Or if we come back down, I'm going to be cautious here, but potential sells retest that zone here, and I'm not going to take any buys here just because we're going counter to the US dollar. And well, you know what? I mean, it could work, but for me, it's not going to happen, because I want at least 2 time frames to be in my favor. In other words, I'd like to have the 1 hour, 4 hour combined here, but right now the 1 hour is bearish and the 4 hour is bullish, and the daily is bearish. So we got mixed signals here, and we're retesting this zone here where we have bearish momentum so far overnight, but we're retesting some bullish structure. So mixed signals on GU. I'm going to just not touch that for today and focus on gold.